$2,600 for a fully custom bike, people. In this video, I'm going to review the Phinney Ridge from Rodriguez, a bike I got a chance to ride a couple weeks ago when I was in Seattle. Find out what I think about it in this video. Welcome back, Pathless Peddlers, and if you're new to the channel, if you're into things like gravel riding, the non-competitive side of cycling, the supple life, you have found your people, hit that subscribe button. And if you like this content, if it's helped you, please consider supporting us on Patreon. You get lots of awesome deals from brands we love, as well as keeping this content going. When I was in Seattle a couple weeks ago, I got a chance to spend a couple of days with the Rodriguez Phinney Ridge bike. If you're not familiar with Rodriguez, we did a whole bike shop slash factory tour with them. They've been making hand-built bikes out of Seattle for the last 46 years. So a really well-established builder, one that doesn't seem to get as much attention as it deserves in my opinion. So what is the Phinney Ridge and how can you get a fully custom bike out the door, rideable for less than 2,600 bucks. The Phinney Ridge is their kind of do-it-all platform that can be set up as a tourer, as a gravel bike, as a commuter. It can be built up with any wheel size you want, 700, 650B, 26 inches, and it's custom built to fit you. They've got a whole fit chart. You can go in the shop, get fitted, and they will dial in the dimensions just so it rides like a glove. It also uses an interesting fork that they developed. It looks like a carbon fork, but it's actually aluminum. And what's unique about the fork is that it's got all the brays on, so you can run a rack, you can run a basket, but it also has more offset than traditional forks out there on the market. So what this means is that if you're a shorter rider and you want to run bigger tires, pushes the wheel out further in front of you so you don't get that toe overlap. You can still run fenders. And it also keeps the trail within a reasonable range. Typically with small bikes, to accommodate for toe overlap, bike manufacturers adjust a head tube angle without adjusting the brake. So this creates a really slow and sloppy ride in the front. If you want a deeper dive on that, check out our video on bicycle trail. But also check out this article by Rodriguez where he goes into all that stuff in lots and lots of detail. So the Phinney Ridge I rode was kind of a floor demo model. Probably not how I would have set mine up exactly, but gave me a pretty good representation of what they can do. So the tires on it were 650B Gravel Kings at 27.5 by 1.9 inches. Mine was set up quick release, although I do believe you can get through axle options if you really want. It was using SRAM Rival hydraulic drifters, Force 1 cranks, fit with a typical compact rear double, so 50-34. And I believe in the rear it was like a 11-32. So not my ideal gearing. I probably would have geared it a little bit lower or spec'd it with a wide range single or the new GRX. But you've got options, you know, when you get a custom bike built, you can spec that all out. So I'm not gonna like dwell too much on the component choice in this video. Because as we all know, the most important thing about a bike is how it rides. So I was fortunate enough to go on a ride with Dan, the current owner of Rodriguez. They took us on a hilly ride through Seattle, going up and down paved roads, up and down dirt trails. I have no idea where we went. I just know it was hilly and it was kind of wet and soggy. So I think a pretty good test for this bike. In talking to Dan, he really prefers the trail number in the front to be around 60 millimeters. So that's kind of a mid-neutral trail, kind of the trail number that you would see in most endurance road bikes. It's a little bit more responsive than the current crop of gravel bikes, certainly more responsive than my Bambora, but not as twitchy as a full-on crit bike. The rear of the bike felt relatively responsive, but wasn't quick and jumpy. So I think the chainstays were around that 430 all-rounder length. Overall, the bike handled pretty well, handled really neutral. No real quirks to it. It was just a real solid riding bike. It climbed well, it descended well. It wasn't jarring. I think the 650B tires really helped on that front. And overall, I was pretty impressed with the ride. I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling that you can get a bike that is custom built to fit you for the cost of lots of, you know, just standard production bikes. In talking with Dan as we were riding, I asked him how negotiable were the geometry specs on the bike. Let's say if you like shorter chainstays, you know, could they do that? Or is there a stock template for the Phinney Ridge? And his response was that it was actually really up to you. A lot of the geometry numbers were negotiable. So if you were very hard set on some specific specs, they would work with you to meet those kind of requirements. You can even play with the tubing a little bit. They do offer a lighter tube set, which I think would be pretty interesting to explore. If you're gonna get a custom bike belt, you might as well, you know, go custom. I also asked Dan what their delivery time is for a fully custom bike, and it was a shocking 4 to 6 weeks. And one reason they can turn it around so quickly, if you saw our factory tour, is they've got everything dialed. The jigs are super easy to set up for different bike builds. They do so much in-house, from adding braze-ons to the fork, to welding the bike, to assembly, to even paint. So it really is like this tight, hermetically sealed mini factory in Seattle. And because of that, they can bang out a bike in pretty quick order. So the Phinney Ridge I rode was a solid bike. I would probably tweak mine a little bit differently, so don't take this video as a full-on review as the entire line, because it is so customizable, but more as a general review on the platform, because you can truly make it whatever you want. From tire size, you are not limited, to even things like chainstay length and trail. All that stuff is on the table to be negotiated. So what did I like and dislike about the Phinney Ridge? Again, it's kind of really hard to give a conclusive answer, because I did have such a short period of time on the bike, and every Phinney Ridge is essentially a different custom bike. I love that you can, one, customize it, that it will fit perfectly to you, and you could get a completely rideable bike for the same price as most production bikes. I love that at least the projected turnaround time is fairly quick. I mean, less than 2 months, people. Some builders have waiting lists out there for 10 years. So it's cool to see you can have a custom bike fulfilled within a very reasonable time frame. If there is one thing I didn't like, it might be kind of the paint and the graphics. I prefer a little bit more simpler font on my bike, although they do have examples of more modern styling on their bike. I think they're totally underrated for what they do. I think a lot of that might actually just come down to aesthetics. If they can have a little bit more interesting color choices, or just some more modern touches, I think more people would be more stoked about the brand. So yeah, $2,600 for a custom bike. Pretty amazing. I'd love to try a future version of the Phinney Ridge, maybe with the lighter tubing and some geometry tweaks. But overall, the fact that you can get a custom bike handmade in the US for that price is just bonkers. That's what I think. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you have any questions like those in the comments, I'll be sure to answer them. And if you like this content, consider supporting the channel. And as always, keep the supple side down.